Hello dear students, how are you today? I hope you are doing well. Welcome to our learning program, Ready to Learn, produced by Rwanda Education Board, REP, in partnership with UNICEF and Inspire, Educate and Empower Rwanda, IEE. My name is Teacher Jen, and I'm glad to be with you. Today, we are learning Geography for Senior 4. Before we start, dear students, remember to wear face masks, wash your hands as many times as you can, avoid handshaking, and observe social distancing to avoid the spread of coronavirus. Thank you. You can find the lesson on page 130 of the student book. Dear students, our objective is that by the end of this lesson, you will be able to name different types of vegetation found in Rwanda, give the importance of vegetation, identify the factors influencing vegetation, and discuss the causes of destruction of vegetation in Rwanda. Thank you. This means that we are going to learn vegetation in Rwanda. To start, I'm going to read you a short passage. Listen carefully and answer related questions. Are you ready? All right. Kamariza is a teacher of geography at Groupe Scolaire Kabuga. She organized a fieldwork study for her students. They visited the Nyungwe forest to observe the tree species and the characteristics of the forest. She also took her students to a farm near the school that had planted trees. The students observed that in Nyungwe forest there was a thick undergrowth which prevented them from getting deep into the forest. Friends, what is the name given to the trees and undergrowth that the students saw? Again, name different types of vegetation seen by the students. Thank you. The answer to these questions, we will get them through our discussion. Dear students, in Senior 1, you learned about vegetation. You defined vegetation as all the plant cover growing in a particular area. It also refers to the ground cover provided by plants. While vegetation of a place is defined as a community of plants such as trees, shrubs, herbs, and grasses that cover a given area, giving it a distinct character. Isn't it? Dear students, we have different types of vegetation in Rwanda. And I want you to think of the vegetation around your home area and school. Describe the vegetation that you always see around your homes and around your school. All right. There are 3 types of vegetation in Rwanda: natural vegetation, artificial or planted vegetation, and secondary vegetation. Most of the time, people ignore that third types of vegetation, the secondary vegetation, but you should be aware that it is also there. And we have natural, artificial or planted vegetation, and secondary vegetation. When we talk of artificial vegetation or planted vegetation, it is the vegetation that grows under human influence. Humans plant this type of vegetation for various reasons. This type of vegetation covers the greatest percentage of the land. Artificial vegetation ranges from trees to row crops and grasslands planted by humans as farmlands. Forests made up of exotic trees are examples of planted vegetation. Exotic trees will include pine, cypress, and eucalyptus. When we talk of secondary vegetation, that is mostly ignored by people. This is the vegetation that grows naturally in an area after being interfered with by people or animals. It is also known as a derived vegetation. The vegetation is still in the process of development and will eventually acquire the characteristics of natural vegetation. A good example of secondary vegetation is the one that grows in an area after the previous vegetation cover is cleared or destroyed by an outbreak of fire. Do you know any such vegetation in your area? The secondary vegetation. Do you know such vegetation around you? The third type of vegetation is natural vegetation. Refers to the plants that grow in a given area without human influence. This type of vegetation is not planted. They grow on their own. The specific examples of natural vegetation in Rwanda include Nyungwe Forest, Gishwati, Mukura, Volcanoes Bamboo Forest and Moorland, and Akagera Grasslands. The natural vegetation cover in Rwanda occupies about 15% of the general land area. This leaves the remaining part of the land area of the country under other activities such as farming and different socio-economic activities. Of course, settlement is included. Natural vegetation in Rwanda can be divided into 4 categories. We have the categories of mountain forests, Savannah Woodland, Savannah Grassland, and riverine vegetation and marshlands. The first category of mountain forests are found in the mountainous western part of the country, mostly in the mountainous western part of the country and in the north. The largest areas of these forests are Nyungwe Forest, Nyungwe Forest National Park, and it is the biggest natural forest area in the country. We have the natural forest of Chamudongo. This is near Nyungwe. We have Mukura Forest. We have Gishwati and the Volcanoes National Park. The mountain forests are true rainforests which have more than 200 species of trees and a variety of flowering plants. They also have large areas of bamboo forests, while tall, coarse species of grass dominate the open areas within the forest. We also have Savannah Woodland. The largest area in Rwanda that are covered with Savannah woodlands are in Bugesera district and some parts of the south. The vegetation in woodlands is characterized by hardwood of trees that are medium height and short shrubs that have many shoots from one stem. Many of the plants in the woodlands are thorny with small leaves. Occasionally, there are tall umbrella-shaped acacia trees rising above the level of the shrub vegetation. Their numbers increase along river valleys. Most of the woodland vegetation was cut down to give way to farming and settlement. There is also deforestation resulting from alcohol burning. This has left only patches of the natural woodland and some scattered trees which shed their leaves during dry seasons to appear like dry wood. We then have Savannah Grasslands. Savannah Grasslands is somehow different from Savannah Woodlands, and They are found on the lower slopes, including the hills in the central part of the country. These zones have natural vegetation that consists of thick, tall, highland grasses with scattered trees. The drier plains in the eastern part of the country support open savanna grasslands with scattered wood trees such as acacia. Part of the area is Akagera National Park. We also have the riverine vegetation and marshlands as type of vegetation found in Rwanda. This type of vegetation is found in wetlands areas such as Rugezi Swamp in Burera district and rivers including Akagera, Nyabarongo, Rusizi, and other small river valleys. Riverine vegetation and marshland consist of lowland forests and pepperized swamps. Part of the wetlands are threatened by the invasive plants such as water hyacinth. These plants grow rapidly, I'm talking of water hyacinth, covering the top surface of the water and replacing the original vegetation. And it is a big challenge to the country. Welcome back. Now, let's look at factors influencing the types of vegetation. Friends, I want you to use your prior knowledge on vegetation and find out the factors that may influence the distribution and the types of vegetation in Rwanda. Alright, there are a number of factors that directly or indirectly influence the distribution and types of vegetation in Rwanda. And they are many. They include drainage. They include drainage, climate, altitude, soils, slope aspect, biotic factors, and human activities. Thank you. When you look at drainage, drainage plays a great role in determining the types of vegetation that is found in a given area. The amount of moisture and water contained in the soils has a great influence in the growth of plants. For example, in swampy areas along the banks of rivers, lakes, shores, and marsh areas, vegetation will thrive if they are near sources of water. However, in areas with little or moderate rainfall, such as the eastern region of the country, savanna grasslands are dominant. Also, the windward sides of the mountainous areas always have dense vegetation due to high level of water content in the soils. Do you understand? On the other hand, the leeward sides have scanty and poor vegetation due to the dry conditions in the area. After drainage, as factors influencing vegetation distribution in Rwanda, we have climate. In fact, the type and distribution of vegetation in Rwanda are greatly influenced by climate. The most significant climatic aspects that are directly related to the distribution of vegetation are rainfall and temperature. Areas which receive a lot of rainfall that is well distributed throughout support dense vegetation of equatorial nature. This can be seen in some parts of Rwanda, in areas like Nyungwe, Gishwati, and in the Birunga region. On the other hand, areas that experience low rainfall totals such as Umutara, Nyagatare, Kayonza, and Bugesera have savanna vegetation. Areas that are associated with high temperatures such as Bugesera, Kayonza, Kirehe, Nyagatare have little savanna vegetation, of course. The next factor influencing types of vegetation and distribution is altitude. Altitude has a great influence on the nature, type and distribution of vegetation. As one ascends a mountain, one notices the varying types of vegetation. This is due to differences in the type of soils, temperatures, and rainfall experienced at given altitudes. For example, in the foothills of mountainous regions such as the lower parts of Mount Muhabura and Karisimbi, savanna vegetation is abundant. This is so especially in areas that have not been interfered by humans. On the other hand, in higher altitudes, equatorial type of vegetation is found. Beyond this zone, bamboo vegetation is evident. The bamboo is followed by short grasslands, alpine grass, and sometimes moorland. The fourth factor is soils. Soils play a great role in influencing the nature, types, and distribution of vegetation. This means that areas with fertile soils, such as the western and the northern parts of the country, have dense vegetation. On the other hand, areas with poor soils have stunted or no vegetation. This kind of vegetation is evident in the eastern parts of Rwanda. While in marshy areas with soils that are water-lodged, there are swampy vegetation and other types of aquatic plant growth. We also have slope aspect as factor influencing distribution and types of vegetation. Slope aspect also has a direct influence in determining vegetation. Slope aspect helps in determining the degree of exposure of vegetation to sunshine, which is very helpful for plant growth. Therefore, the parts of the slope that are exposed to much sunshine have dense vegetation than the opposite slope. We also have biotic factors. Biotic factors such as animals and diseases have a direct influence on vegetation. In fact, a combination of animals such as birds, monkeys, and other living organisms influence vegetation distribution in an area. This is true because animals carry seeds of plants and disperse them in different areas, hence contributing to their spread. On the other hand, diseases and pests can lead to serious destruction of vegetation. Also, overgrazing by animals can also lead to destruction of vegetation in a given area. Lastly, we have human activities. In Rwanda, government initiatives have led to the planting of various vegetation ranging from crops to trees under environmental conservation. On the other hand, human activities like deforestation led to the destruction of vegetation. Thank you. Dear students, welcome back. Now, let's look at importance of vegetation in Rwanda. You know that the government of Rwanda has embarked on a serious program of conserving the vegetation in the country, isn't it? The program seeks to conserve grasslands to densely forested areas. The government has even set aside a special day for tree planting and afforestation. You know that the day is locally known as Umunsi w'Igiti. Also, different rules and regulations have been set for cutting trees. Dear students, why do you think Rwanda as a country is advocating for the conservation and use of forest sustainability? Why do you think Rwanda as a country is advocating for the conservation and use of forests sustainably. Thank you. In Rwanda, vegetation is a valued resource. In fact, vegetation is a general source of raw materials for industries. They include timber used in furniture making, grass used in basketry and weaving, and food plants used in the manufacture of food products. Also, vegetation can be source of fuel for example, wood used as firewood. Vegetation acts in modification of climate. It helps in rain formation through the process of evapotranspiration. Also, plants absorb excess carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, hence reducing the effects of global warming. Also, vegetation contributes to soil conservation. Trees act as anti-erosion agents because their roots bind soil particles together and stop them from being eroded by running water. In addition, the litter from tree leaves act as sponges and protect the ground from being eroded, hence conserving the soils. Also, you should be aware that herbal medicines are obtained from different types of vegetation. Again, forests act as habitat for wild animals and plants. I think also know that vegetation is a place for recreational activities. Birds and other various animals and plants attract tourists, thus earning the country foreign exchange. You know that the mountain gorillas in Virunga, monkeys in Nyungwe forest, and other animals such as zebra, buffaloes, elephants in Akagera are the proof. Vegetation also is important because it is one of the diversification of the economy. The exploitation of vegetation such as trees has led to the diversification of economy in Rwanda, and this has helped to reduce over-reliance on agriculture. Vegetation has also contributed to research purposes, to creation of employment opportunities, and it is a source of oxygen and serves as water catchment areas. Vegetation holds water especially in runoff, which would otherwise be responsible for flooding and erosion, mass wasting, and landslides. Thank you. However, even if we have various importances of vegetation, we also have negative effects. Yes, in spite of vegetation having positive contribution towards the development and prosperity of the economy, it also has negative effects to it. Its negatives can be hindrance to the economic development. The negative effects would include difficulties in the establishment of infrastructure. In fact, dense vegetation makes the construction of transport and communication routes difficult and more costly. In some areas where there is dense vegetation, such as in some parts of Nyungwe region, some villages are isolated and left out. This is a fact. Also, pests and diseases vegetation, such as forest harbor dangerous pests and diseases which affect people living near them. For example, we have mosquitoes, which can cause malaria to humans, and tsetse flies, which cause sleeping sickness to humans. We also have some species for less economic value. The vegetation of Rwanda hugely consists of a variety of species which are of less economic importance. They occupy large parts of the land that would otherwise be utilized for various economic development. Vegetation can also act as obstacle to settlements. Forested areas limit land for settlements and farming, especially in densely populated areas. This is because the demand for land is so high. Many people have failed to get enough land for cultivation and places to build homes in favor of conservation. Remember also we have wild animals especially in natural vegetation. In fact, this vegetation usually provides habitat to wild animals. The animals cause a lot of destruction to humans. An area like Nyungwe Forest is home to monkeys which destroy crops. There are also dangerous snakes that are a threat to humans. Now, I want you to think of the state of the vegetation in your area. Think of the causes of destruction of vegetation. Welcome back. Now, friends, I want you to think of the state of the vegetation in your area. Think of the causes of destruction of vegetation. Thank you. There are a number of factors that account for the destruction of vegetation in Rwanda. These include the harsh climatic conditions in many parts of the country, the high population. You know that the ever-increasing population has created pressure on the existing vegetation, and some parts of the forest have been cleared. Swamps are reclaimed and grasslands are cleared in search of more land for settlement and agriculture. Also, urbanization has caused the destruction of vegetation in Rwanda. The development and establishment of urban centers have affected vegetation, and this is because vegetation has to be cleared as the towns grow and expand towards the conserved areas. We also have improper farming methods, especially in rural areas where population is still devoted to use of traditional methods of cultivation. We also have natural causes like landslides and mass wasting, which have left scars along the slopes of most areas of Rwanda. And lastly, fuel needs for Rwandan population in rural areas is also a challenge because they depend on wood as a convenient source of fuel for domestic use. This has led to the cutting down of trees in search of fuel. Dear students, as we are reaching the end of our lesson, let us highlight the major areas we focused on. What have we learned today? All right. We have said that much of Rwanda's natural rainforest, once covering a third of the country, has been cut down to make way for its ever-growing population. The only remaining large stands of the forest remain at Nyungwe Forest National Park and to a lesser degree the Volcanoes National Park. The forest at Nyungwe is a true rainfall and is one of Africa's oldest forests. It has a very high biodiversity, at least 200 species of trees and a similar number of herbs. Mountain grassland and moorland traditionally covered much of Rwanda's rolling highlands, but terraced agriculture now dominates. This has led to serious soil erosion in some areas. The poor soil of the eastern part of Rwanda support open savanna and broadleaf woodland species, acacias and grasses. Dear students, let's conclude our lesson by an exit ticket. Take your notebook and note down the following questions. Are you ready? Great. 1. Describe the specific measures that should be put in place to conserve the vegetation in the area within and near your school. Describe the specific measures that should be put in place to conserve the vegetation in the area within and near your school. The second question, Discuss why it is important to conserve the vegetation within and near your school. Discuss why it is important to conserve the vegetation within and near your school. Thank you for your participation. I was Teacher Jen. See you soon.